How have you seen a person's life be ruined in a single day? My friend's husband produced and consumed child porn, including some photos of their children and nephews. She found out when DHS raided their apartment. It tore her life apart. She's doing well now, though. Divorced, obviously, and he no longer has any parental rights. She's still struggling to help her kids process the whole thing. My neighbor knocked on the front door early one morning. We'd never met. He introduced himself and wanted me to know why there might be a lot of cars parked in front of the house. All three of his children had died in a car accident the night before. I've been reading these comments for a couple of hours now. This is the one that hit me in the gut. This man has lost everything and still being considerate of his neighbors. A girl in my class got caught with a thermos full of vodka, and when the teacher caught her, she got sent to the principal's office. Well, when the principal asked her why she was drinking, the girl told him that she had been sleeping with the school resource officer. Dude was a cop stationed at the school having sex with a 10th grader. Got dragged out of the school by officers that worked alongside him. At the court hearing, they found out he was having sex with 2 more girls at the school. His wife and 2 kids were in the courtroom to support him because he told them he was innocent. That kinda caped when one of the girls had a video of the 2 of them having sex. Our former SRO is now dating a former student who is the same age as me. We graduated in 2015. He left his wife and kids for her. We all shuddered when we remembered how often she was in his office during the school day, having lunch, hanging out, whatever. One day during my junior year in high school, back in the 1980s, I came downstairs on a Saturday morning and my mom asked me, "Do you know Bob Johnson?" Asterisk, I said yeah. I sit next to him in English. She turned the local newspaper around and there was Bob on the front page in handcuffs. He had murdered his dad and tried to cover it up. Apparently his dad had been raping him for years, and Bob finally had enough. Shot his dad in the head with a .22 while he slept. Fortunately the courts were lenient. They gave him a new identity, moved him out to somewhere in the Midwest, and gave him counseling. I guess this one day ruined his dad's life and saved his own. I saw him on Facebook a couple of years ago. He's using his real name, is married with kids, and working as a driver for one of the big parcel delivery services. I'm so glad his life turned out pretty normal. Asterisk, not his real name. Doing an MRI on a 33-year-old healthy man because he was a bit dizzy and finding a golf ball tumor in his brain. Read the radiology report. Google type of tumor. Finding only 5% survive. Edit. I should also say that I do a lot of 30-something-year-olds who come in for head issues and almost every single one of them are fine. Is that 5% survival for people with that type of tumor due to being unidentified until after death, or 5% survival after being diagnosed? Most likely 5% survival rate 5 years after the diagnosis. That's how survival is often quantified in medicine. My dad used to work at Prudential Financial, and he told me that in the days after Enron stock suddenly dropped to nothing, some of his coworkers just walked around like zombies. Apparently they'd put a ton of money into Enron and were now completely screwed. That's nuts. Both of my parents worked at Pru. Both lost their jobs when I was in elementary school. I never asked what happened, but it was understood the company had to make major cutbacks. Looking back, it was definitely a difficult time for my mom, dad and us 3 young kids. But they never let on to that fact. Beep. They're great parents. When I was in EMT school, we were told about a paramedic student, instructor was a paramedic as well, who observed a stabbing call. They arrive at the bar and see a dude with a knife in his abdomen. Medic student takes lead and pulls the knife out, something you never do as I'm sure you know. Senior medic loses his beeping mind at this dumbass, asking him what the BP was thinking. Student freaks out and, you guessed it, puts the beeping knife back in. The patient died as a result. Student lost any chance of having a good job, not even just in EMS, and was charged with the death of the patient. Might have been manslaughter, I don't remember. His entire life was ruined because he freaked out and made a mistake on a call, not a rookie mistake or a common slip up. But in about half a minute he ruined his life. Holy beep. Also the fact the series of events was 1. Man stabbed 2. Thank God Ems is here 3. Man stabbed again. Have a friend whose boss got into an ugly car accident a week ago. Today she was officially told she's paralyzed from the waist down. She was also notified today that her husband died, non-car accident related. I don't know exactly why he passed, but to go from a happy life with your soulmate to not being able to walk and have your life partner is something I can't imagine recovering soon from. That's literally the stuff of my nightmares. Watched a mom and her kid on a boat, escorted by law enforcement back to the dock. Her boyfriend had gone swimming off the boat. The wind pushed the vessel away from him. She didn't know anything about how to turn it on to move it closer. It kept getting farther. He kept swimming harder. He eventually slipped under and was recovered 80 feet down a few days later. I'll never forget the look on her face. Never. He was a 28-year-old man. Peak health. Wear a life jacket, people. You are not stronger than Mother Nature. And don't leave a boat without someone who can drive it safely. Not my personal experience, but a national news story. A van full of college students got into an accident and most of them died, but one girl survived with major injuries. She had facial trauma and was hospitalized for weeks. She kept repeating another girl's name as she was recovering. Turns out, she was saying her own name. She and another similarly built, same hair and eye-colored female passenger were mistakenly identified for each other in the aftermath of the crash. Her family had a funeral for her, and the other girl's family were the ones at her bedside before the misidentification was realized. I cannot even imagine the suffering of thinking your daughter was alive for weeks and then learning she'd been dead all along, or having a funeral for a child who was actually alive and you didn't know. Link. Our province had a massive accident last year where a hockey team bus was demolished by a semi that ran a stop sign. Over half the team died. What made it harder was all the boys had dyed their hair the same blondish color, all with the same hockey player body type. It took a while to identify everyone, and one of the boys they were certain was dead turned out to be alive. But he was so badly injured they thought he was someone else. It took a few days before he regained consciousness and could tell the families who he really was. I work as a registered nurse in a hospital in Kentucky. A patient came in through the air raising hell and yelling things like I want to donate my organs. This place sucks. Beep all of you. Etc. etc. He stomped out the front door entrance and a CNA, nurse's assistant, followed him out to attempt at calming him down. He brandished a .45 and blew his brains out in front of the young assistant. He died. Organs couldn't be harvested. And she is in therapy. When I was a kid I lived in an apartment complex. One of the families had 3 young kids. One day the parents needed to run some errands, so they hired a babysitter to watch the kids. The babysitter fell asleep, and one of the kids started playing with some matches. The parents came home to huge billowing clouds of smoke and fire coming from all the windows. All 3 kids and the babysitter died. They were only gone for about an hour. I didn't know my biological father. He remarried after my mother dumped him and had 3 kids with his new wife. When the oldest was 12, BO dad and wife left her in charge and went out to the movies or something and came back to a house in flames and 3 dead daughters. When I finally met him decades later, he told me that they smelled gas in the house that morning, but didn't do anything about it. So he had to live with that. When I was like 9 or something, a boy from my class was killed by his mother before she committed suicide. I saw it on the news that night, only to learn it was him the next morning. We all got sat down in like 4th grade, that's about age 9 to 10 here, and told to be extra nice to one boy who was returning to school after being gone. I later found out that his dad had killed his mother and himself in front of the boy. I have no idea how you come back from that, even if the other kids are nice for a few days, but kudos to our school for trying, I guess. Like 7-ish years ago, a bunch of the crew chiefs at my guard base were out celebrating one of their own who got his associate's degree. They were all drinking, not a ton, and eventually went home. Except for one guy. He stayed and drank until last call. He decided to drive home. He hit a 20-year-old who was on his way to work at about 2 AM and turned him into a paraplegic. Our wing commander basically told him, plead guilty to the county and go to jail with an administrative discharge. His family would have been able to keep some of his benefits, like the Valone and GI Bill, or fight it, lose, cost his family tons of money, and get a dishonorable. Dishonorable basically is like you never even served. He plead guilty. Edit. Dishonorable like you never served in regards to benefits. Any bonuses you received you have to pay back. Medals are rescinded. It is also listed on job applications, and people will deny you because of it. I know a dishonorable is like a felony, but to do it is a long process, regardless if he got convicted in civilian criminal court. His discharge was a hey, you still have 2 years left in your contract before re-enlistment, so you're just going to resign that right now instead. Also, to the people who think that he got away scot-free, he didn't. He went to jail. Felony DUI and assault with a deadly weapon or something like that. The wing commander only allowed him to do at least one selfless thing and still be able to transfer his GI Bill and Valone to his family. He also had to pay medical expenses for the kid he hit, and probably other damages as well, so it's not like he got a free pass on that. I was part of a notification team that told a mother that her 20-year-old son had died. Watching her collapse, I know that her life would never be the same after that. When I was about 13, I was talking with my best friend at a playground on a hill. Suddenly this lady comes racing down on her bike. She's not wearing a helmet, which was unfortunate because her bike slipped from underneath her and she goes flying, smacks her head into a corner. I was too young to know this at the time, but I'm almost certain she died instantly. Wear a helmet. My daily commute takes me past a local skate park. Nobody wears a helmet, let alone any other kind of protection. I can't wrap my head around it. Do people think they look cool or tough because they don't wear a helmet? When I was growing up, a kid on my street fell off his longboard backwards and cracked his skull open. Months of recovery, if not years. Obligatory. I love helmets. Coworker got caught stealing and got fired. He went home and told his wife, and apparently she had enough and left him and took the kids. Police found him the next morning in the woods deceased. I saw a man's life just crumble in less than 24 hours. Edit. Okay, for some context. When I say steal, I mean close to $100,000 in precious metals from a cushy federal government job. Edit 2. He was going to be arrested and knew it. Also, he killed himself for everyone asking. This was back in junior high school. Dude sent his nudes to an 8-year-old, him being 12, and the school found out. The cops were involved, and they pulled up to the school, and he left in handcuffs. It also turned out that same 8-year-old that he sent nudes to, he beat her into a coma. Don't know what happened to him. Obviously he had some sort of assault and child pornography charges, but that's all I know. Yep. At least several times a month we had to take care of a family who learned that their child had cancer that day. Pretty terrible, life-altering news. I spent a lot of time distracting kids with board games / coloring while their parents were talking to doctors, crying, and then amazingly pulling it together to continue on. My parents talked about this day for me. I was diagnosed with leukemia when I was between 3 to 4 years old. It was a misdiagnosis, but they said they thought it was a death sentence, and it was horrible. Did you live? 3 weeks after graduating from high school, a student got drunk at a party and put a knife in another guy's chest. Didn't kill him, but it was a close call. Goodbye adulthood. An 18-year-old tried to steal a couple bottles of Hennessy from my store. When I confronted him, he swung the bottle at my head and connected. I rolled with the blow, so it didn't do much damage. Charged with assault and robbery by my company. Violent crimes offender, and lost custody of his baby. Edit. Guess I should have said the company I work for instead of my company, as I'm no owner. Lol.